The cargo vessel Starward Hope floated in the darkness of the nebula like a wounded animal. Its engines were dead. Its power systems flickered weakly. Inside the ship, 37 human beings waited for rescue that might never come. Captain Cole stood on the bridge and stared at the emergency lights that painted everything in shades of red. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 23 years hauling cargo across the stars, and he had never lost a crew member. He did not plan to start now. The collision had come without warning. A chunk of debris, probably from some ancient wreck, had torn through their engine section like a bullet through paper. 3 crew members had been injured. The engines were destroyed. Life support was running on backup power, and that backup would not last forever. Amy sat at the communications station. She was young, only 26 years old, with short brown hair and quick hands that danced across her controls. She had been sending the distress signal for 6 hours now. The SOS went out on every frequency, including the universal channel that all species in the galaxy were supposed to monitor. Captain Cole walked over to her station. He put a hand on her shoulder. "Any response?" he asked. Amy shook her head. "Nothing yet, Captain, but someone has to hear us. The signal is strong." In the engine room, Chief Engineer Shaw was covered in grease and sweat. He was a big man with thick arms and a bald head. He had spent the last several hours trying to bring any system back online. His tools were scattered around him like fallen soldiers. His assistant, a young man named Pete Collins, handed him another power cell, took it without looking and connected it to the auxiliary generator. The lights flickered, grew slightly brighter, then stabilized. "That will give us another 12 hours of life support," said. "Maybe 14, if we turn off everything we do not need." Pete nodded. He was scared, could see it in his eyes, but the young man did not complain. He simply handed the next tool he needed. In the medical bay, Doctor worked on the wounded. She was a small woman with red hair tied back in a practical bun. Her hands were steady even though her heart was racing. She had 3 patients. One had a broken arm. One had cuts from flying debris. The third, a man named Gary Lane, had a piece of metal in his leg. Gave Gary something for the pain and carefully removed the metal. Gary gritted his teeth but did not scream. He was a cargo handler, strong and quiet. When she finished, bandaged the wound and told him he would be fine. "Will we be rescued, Doc?" Gary asked. Smiled at him. "Of course we will. Someone will come." She hoped she was telling the truth. On the bridge, Amy suddenly sat up straight. "Captain," she said, "I am receiving a transmission." Cole moved quickly to her side. His heart lifted with hope. "Put it through," he ordered. The speakers crackled, and then a voice filled the bridge. It was not a human voice. It was high-pitched and filled with something that took a moment to recognize. The alien was laughing. The voice belonged to Commander of the Collective. His species had been part of the Galactic Assembly for thousands of years. They considered themselves civilized, advanced, superior to all others, and they thought humans were a joke. Spoke in the common galactic language that all species used for communication. He said that he had received the human distress signal. He said that his crew had found it very amusing. He called humans primitive creatures from a death world. He said that no civilized species would waste time or resources rescuing such pathetic life forms. Cole listened in silence, his hands curled into fists at his sides. Continued. He explained to his audience, because he was broadcasting this for entertainment, that humans came from a planet called Earth. This planet, he said, was a nightmare. The gravity was crushing. The weather was violent. The animals were savage predators. Diseases swept across the surface regularly. The planet even shook itself apart with earthquakes and erupted with volcanoes. Any sensible species, said, would have died on such a world. But humans were too stupid to know they should be dead. They had somehow crawled out of their death world and into space, where they did not belong. The commander laughed again. He announced that he would not be sending help. He suggested that other species listening should also ignore the signal. Let the death die in the dark, he said. It would be a mercy. The transmission ended. Amy stared at her console. Her face was pale. "Captain," she whispered. "That signal was broadcast on open channels. Everyone in the sector heard it." Cole did not respond immediately. He stood very still, processing what had just happened. His crew was dying and the galaxy was laughing at them. More transmissions came in over the next hour. They sent a mocking message. The crystalline hegemony sent a formal statement saying they had no obligation to assist primitive species. A dozen other alien races chimed in with jokes and insults. The crew of the Starward Hope heard it all. They sat in the darkened corridors of their dying ship and listened to the galaxy tell them they were worthless. But Cole was not a man who gave up easily. He walked to Amy and leaned down to speak quietly. "The secondary array," he said, "the one we use for long-range communication back to Earth. Is it working?" Amy checked her systems. "Yes, Captain. It was not damaged in the collision." Nodded slowly. "Then send everything. Send our distress call. Send the transmission. Send all of it. Send it to Terran Command." Amy understood. Her fingers moved across the controls. The message went out, traveling through fold space relays, crossing light years in moments. It flew past alien stations and through human territory until it reached its destination. Earth. Cole turned to face his crew. The men and women who had served with him for years looked back at him with fear and hope mixed together in their eyes. He spoke calmly. "Help is coming," he told them. "I do not know how long it will take, but Earth will not abandon us. Humanity does not leave its own behind." He believed it. He had to believe it. In the cold darkness of the nebula, the Starward Hope drifted and waited. Its crew rationed food and water. They shared blankets against the growing cold. They told stories to keep their spirits up. And somewhere across the stars, their message was being received. The message arrived at United Terran Command Headquarters at 3 in the morning, Earth time. The night shift officer read it twice, then immediately contacted his superiors. Within 20 minutes, Admiral Gregg was out of bed and walking into the war room. Gregg was 62 years old. He had white hair cut short and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He had served in the Terran military for 40 years. He had seen pirates and raiders and hostile alien encounters, but he had never seen anything like the message that now played on the main screen. The distress call from the Starward Hope came first. Then came the transmission. The mocking laughter filled the war room. The insults echoed off the walls. Every officer present watched in silence as Commander called humanity primitive, stupid, and worthless. When the recording ended, no one spoke for a long moment. Admiral broke the silence. He asked how many souls were aboard the Starward Hope. A young officer named Lisa Grant checked her data. 37 crew members, sir, all civilians. The ship was carrying medical supplies to the outer colonies. Nodded slowly. Medical supplies. They were out there trying to help people, and the galaxy decided to let them die for entertainment. He turned to face his staff. His eyes were hard as iron. "Contact Rear Admiral Laura," he said. "Tell her the 7th Battle Group deploys in 1 hour." Laura received the orders aboard her flagship, the dreadnought USS Resolute. She was 45 years old, with dark hair streaked with gray and eyes that missed nothing. She had earned her rank through decades of service and more combat experience than most officers would see in 3 lifetimes. Her executive officer, Commander Palmer, stood beside her as she watched the transmission. Was a tall man with broad shoulders and a calm demeanor that hid a fierce loyalty to his crew and his species. When the recording finished, Laura turned it off. She had seen enough. Palmer spoke first. "Admiral, the nebula is deep in assembly space. If we go in with a battle group, they will consider it an act of aggression." Laura looked at him. They have 37 of our people, civilians, and they are letting them die while laughing about it. What would you call that?" Had no answer. Laura walked to the main console and opened a channel to all ships in the 7th Battle Group. Her voice was steady and clear as she addressed her fleet. "All hands, this is Admiral. We have received a distress call from a civilian vessel stranded in the nebula. Our people are in danger. The species of the Galactic Assembly have refused to help them. In fact, they have mocked their suffering and called for their death." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We are the 7th Battle Group of the Terran Defense Fleet. We do not leave our people behind. We deploy in 1 hour. All ships prepare for fold space jump. Out." Across 12 warships, crews rushed to battle stations. Engineers brought reactors to full power. Weapons officers loaded ammunition and checked targeting systems. Pilots ran to their fighters and began pre-flight checks. In the crew quarters of the USS Resolute, Lieutenant Commander Hart strapped on his sidearm and headed for the weapons station. Was 31 years old, with sandy hair and a reputation as one of the best gunners in the fleet. He had joined the military because he believed in protecting people. Today, he would get the chance to prove it. Lieutenant Ben Carter led a team of Marines as they prepared for potential boarding operations. Ben was young, only 28, but he had already seen combat during the Mars Station incident 3 years ago. His people trusted him because he never asked them to do anything he would not do himself. Chief Tactical Officer Price coordinated the defensive systems across the battle group. She was a quiet woman who rarely smiled, but her mind worked faster than most computers. She had already calculated 17 different battle scenarios based on the available intelligence about alien forces in the area. In the medical bay, Dr. Wells prepared for casualties. She hoped there would be none, but she was too experienced to believe in hope alone. She checked her supplies, organized her staff, and made sure everything was ready. The hour passed quickly. Admiral stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute as the countdown reached 0. She gave the order, and 12 ships activated their fold space drives simultaneously. The stars stretched and twisted around them. Reality bent and folded. And then they were gone, hurling across the galaxy toward the nebula. The journey took 4 hours. During that time, Laura reviewed everything they knew about the situation. They had at least one cruiser in the area. Other species might have sent ships as well, drawn by the promise of entertainment. She did not know how many enemies she would face, but she knew it did not matter. She would bring her people home regardless. Palmer approached her with a data pad. "Admiral, we have updated intelligence. It looks like there are now 17 alien vessels gathered near the Starboard Hope." Laura took the data pad and studied it, and others. They had turned her people's suffering into a spectator event. She handed the pad back. "It does not change anything. We go in, we get our people, and we leave. Anyone who tries to stop us will regret it." Nodded, "Yes, Admiral." The fold space exit point approached. Laura straightened her uniform and took her place in the command chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. They were professionals. They were soldiers. And they were about to remind the galaxy why humanity had survived a death world. The USS Resolute dropped out of fold space first. The other 11 ships followed within seconds, emerging in perfect formation. The nebula spread out before them, a vast cloud of purple and gold gases. And there, surrounded by alien vessels, was the Starboard Hope. Laura looked at the alien fleet and felt no fear, only cold, controlled anger. "Open a channel," she ordered, "all frequencies. Let them hear what is coming for them." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Laura leaned forward slightly. Her voice carried across the void to every ship in the area. "This is Rear Admiral Laura of the Terran Defense Fleet. We are here for our people. You will release the civilian vessel Starboard Hope immediately. Any hostile action will be met with overwhelming force. You have 60 seconds to respond. The alien fleet had been laughing an hour ago. They were not laughing now. Commander had been enjoying himself immensely. His crew had set up comfortable viewing stations on the bridge of his cruiser. They had snacks and drinks. They were watching the human ship die slowly, and it was wonderful entertainment. The other alien vessels had joined in the fun. They had brought recording equipment to capture the final moments of the death. The crystalline hegemony had sent observers to document the event for their archives. Everyone wanted to be part of history, the day the galaxy taught humanity its place. Then the fold space ruptures appeared, and everything changed. Watched in confusion as 12 points of light tore open the darkness. He had expected perhaps one small rescue ship, some pathetic attempt by the humans to save their own. He had not expected a battle group. The Terran warships emerged in perfect formation. They were beautiful in a terrifying way. The dreadnought USS Resolute led the formation, a massive vessel bristling with weapons that seemed excessive even by military standards. Behind it came cruisers and destroyers and frigates, all of them moving with the precision of predators on the hunt. Felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt afraid. Then the human admiral spoke, and her words echoed through his bridge. She demanded the release of the civilian vessel. She promised overwhelming force against any hostile action. She gave them 60 seconds. One of his officers turned to him with wide eyes. "Commander, what do we do?" Push down his fear. His species had ruled this region of space for. He would not be intimidated by savages from a death world. He activated his own communication system and replied to the human admiral. He laughed, though the sound was not as confident as before. He told her that she had no authority in assembly space. He pointed out that her fleet was outnumbered. He suggested that she turn her primitive vessels around and go home before she embarrassed herself further. On the bridge of the USS Resolute, Admiral Laura listened to the response. She did not smile. She did not frown. She simply turned to her weapons officer. Lieutenant Commander Hart sat at his station with his hands ready on the controls. He had been waiting for this moment. "Target their engines," Laura ordered. "One shot. Show them we are serious." Nodded targeting, firing. The plasma lance from the Resolute crossed the distance between the ships in less than a second. It struck the cruiser with surgical precision, burning through shields and hull to destroy the engine section. The alien vessel lurched and began to drift, powerless. Was thrown from his chair. Alarms screamed throughout his ship. Crew members shouted in panic as systems failed all around them. In the span of a heartbeat, his cruiser had gone from a proud warship to a helpless wreck. He stared at the in disbelief. One shot. The humans had crippled his ship with one shot. On the bridge of the Starboard Hope, Captain Cole watched the battle begin. Amy had tears streaming down her face as she pointed at the sensors. "Captain," she said, "those are our ships. That is the Terran flag." Cole felt his legs grow weak. He grabbed the edge of his chair to steady himself. "They came," he whispered. "They actually came." Throughout the civilian vessel, crew members gathered at viewports to watch the Terran fleet. Shaw abandoned his repairs and climbed up to the observation deck with Pete Collins. They stood together and watched the human warships move through space like angels of vengeance. Doctor brought Gary Lane to a viewport so he could see. The cargo handler stared at the fleet with wonder in his eyes. "I told you they would come," said softly. "Humanity does not abandon its own." In the alien fleet, chaos reigned. The other species had seen what happened to the cruiser. They had come expecting entertainment, not combat. Their commanders shouted orders and tried to form some kind of defense, but fear made them clumsy. Admiral broadcast again. "This is your final warning. We are here for our people. Stand down and withdraw or share the fate of the vessel." 3 alien ships immediately powered up their drives and fled. Their captains wanted no part of a fight with death. The entertainment was no longer worth the risk. But the remaining vessels held their positions. Pride would not let them retreat. The commander roared defiance. The hegemony observer vessel moved into an attack position. They could not believe that humans, primitive creatures from a savage world, could truly threaten the might of the assembly. They were about to learn otherwise. On the Resolute, Commander Palmer reported the enemy positions. Admiral, 14 hostile vessels remaining. They appear to be forming an attack formation. Laura studied the tactical display. The aliens outnumbered her fleet, but numbers were not everything. Her ships were built by humans for humans. They were designed by a species that had spent its entire existence fighting for survival. Every system was hardened. Every weapon was powerful. Every crew member was trained to never give up. All ships, she ordered, defensive formation Delta, engage at will. The battle began. Lieutenant Commander Hart opened fire with everything the Resolute had. Plasma lances and kinetic rounds streaked across space toward the enemy. Shields flared and hulls buckled under the assault. Commander Palmer coordinated the fighter squadrons. Human pilots in fast attack craft swarmed the larger alien vessels, targeting critical systems with precision strikes. They moved through enemy fire like water through rocks, dodging and weaving while their weapons found their marks. Chief Tactical Officer Price managed the defensive grid. Enemy weapons splashed harmlessly against Terran shields or were intercepted by point defense systems. She anticipated attacks before they came and moved resources to where they were needed. The aliens had never faced anything like this. Their weapons were designed for civilized warfare, for conflicts with clear rules and expected outcomes. Human weapons were designed for survival. There was a difference. Captain Cole watched from the starboard Hope as alien vessels fell one after another. A cruiser lost its weapons array. A hegemony destroyer spun out of control after a fighter strike took out its bridge. The smaller alien ships tried to retreat but found human frigates blocking their escape routes. It was not a battle, it was a lesson. Within 11 minutes, 9 alien vessels were disabled or destroyed. 4 more had surrendered. The remaining ships fled at maximum speed, broadcasting warnings to stay away from the death. Admiral watched the enemy retreat with no satisfaction on her face. She took no joy in violence. She had simply done what was necessary to protect her people. All ships, she announced. Secure the area. Prepare rescue operations. We are bringing our people home. The silence after the battle was almost deafening. Where moments ago there had been weapons fire and explosions, now there was only the quiet hum of ship systems and the distant crackle of damaged alien vessels. Admiral Laura allowed herself one deep breath before returning to work. There were still people to save. Commander Palmer, she said, status report. Palmer checked his displays. All enemy combatants neutralized, Admiral. 9 vessels disabled, 4 surrendered. We have no casualties and minimal damage to our ships. The starboard Hope is intact and holding position. Laura nodded. Get Lieutenant Carter and his team over there. I want our people off that ship within the hour. On the hangar deck of the USS Resolute, Lieutenant Ben Carter gathered his rescue team. 20 Marines in full gear, along with medical personnel and engineers. They loaded into shuttles and launched toward the stranded civilian vessel. Ben Carter had seen combat before, but this mission felt different. This was not about fighting. This was about saving people. It was the reason he had joined the military in the first place. The shuttle docked with the starboard Hope, and the airlock hissed open. Ben was the first through the door, his team following close behind. The interior of the cargo vessel was cold and dark. Emergency lights cast long shadows across the corridors. The air smelled stale from the failing life support. But as the rescue team moved forward, they began to hear voices. Human voices. Captain Cole, Ben called out. Lieutenant Ben Carter, Terran Defense Fleet. We are here to take you home. The response came from around the corner. A man's voice, tired but steady. "Down here, Lieutenant, main corridor." Ben rounded the corner and found them. 37 crew members huddled together in the largest corridor of the ship. They had wrapped themselves in blankets and emergency thermal sheets. Some were injured. All of them were exhausted, but they were alive. Captain Cole stepped forward. He was tall and gray-haired, with the bearing of a man who had shouldered impossible burdens and refused to break. He extended his hand, and Ben Carter shook it firmly. "I knew you would come," said quietly. "I told them. I told everyone." Ben smiled. "Sir, Admiral sends her regards. Let us get your people to safety." The evacuation proceeded quickly. Medical personnel moved among the crew, treating injuries and helping those too weak to walk. Engineers checked the most critical systems to ensure the ship would not collapse during the transfer. Marines stood guard, watching for any sign of remaining threat. Doctor worked alongside the fleet medics, directing them to the patients who needed the most urgent care. Gary Lane refused to be carried out. He limped toward the shuttle under his own power, determined to walk off the ship that had nearly become his tomb. Shaw gathered his engineering team and made sure everyone was accounted for. Young Pete Collins stayed close to his mentor, still processing everything that had happened. They had survived. Against all odds, they had survived. Amy was one of the last to leave. She stood at her communication station for a long moment, looking at the equipment that had sent the message that saved them all. Then she turned off her console and walked to the shuttle. On the bridge of the USS Resolute, Admiral watched the evacuation progress on her tactical display. Every life sign that transferred from the Starward Hope to her ships felt like a small victory. Commander sat in the brig of a Terran cruiser. His proud vessel was a wreck and he was a prisoner. He could not understand how this had happened. Humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be weak. They came from a planet that should have killed them long ago. A human guard walked past his cell and called out to her. "How?" he demanded. "How did you do this? Your species is barely out of your caves. You have no right to be this strong." The guard stopped and looked at him. She was a young woman with dark skin and patient eyes. Her name tag read Corporal Davis. "You want to know how," she said. "I will tell you. We come from a death world. Every day on Earth was a fight for survival. Our planet tried to kill us with earthquakes and volcanoes. It tried to freeze us and burn us. It sent predators to hunt us and diseases to destroy us. And we survived all of it." She leaned closer to the cell bars. "We did not survive despite Earth. We survived because of it. Our world made us strong. It made us stubborn. It taught us that the only way to live is to never give up. And it taught us that we protect our own, no matter what." Stared at her, he had no response. Corporal Davis straightened up. "You thought we were weak because we came from a hard place. You had it backwards. We are strong because we came from a hard place. That is the lesson of the death." She walked away, leaving the commander alone with his thoughts. Back on the Resolute, the evacuees were being processed and cared for. Captain Cole was brought to the bridge to meet Admiral in person. The two officers stood facing each other, and for a moment neither spoke. Then Laura smiled just slightly. "Captain Cole, I am glad we got here in time." Felt emotion welling up in his chest. He fought it down. "Admiral, I cannot begin to thank you. My crew, they thought we were going to die out here." Laura shook her head. "That was never going to happen, not while the fleet could reach you." She turned to look out the viewport at the scattered debris of the alien fleet and the vast nebula beyond. "The galaxy thought they could ignore us," she said quietly. "They thought they could mock our people and let them die for entertainment. Today they learned that was a mistake." Stood beside her. "What happens now?" "Now we go home," Laura replied, "and the Assembly learns what it means to threaten humanity." In the medical bay, Dr. Wells worked alongside to treat the last of the injured. The two women had never met before today, but they worked together like they had known each other for years. That was the way with humans. In times of crisis, they came together. Gary Lane sat on a medical bed while a nurse changed his bandages. He watched the fleet personnel moving around him, efficient and kind. He had lived on the edge of civilization his whole life, hauling cargo to places most people never saw. He had never felt particularly connected to the larger human community. Today that changed. Today he understood what it meant to be part of something bigger than himself. "We really do look out for each other," he said to no one in particular. Heard him and smiled. "Always have, always will. That is what makes us human." The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours, every species in the Galactic Assembly knew what had happened in the nebula. The mighty had been humiliated. The mocking laughter had turned to stunned silence. The death had shown their teeth, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. On the Assembly Council station, representatives from dozens of species gathered in emergency session. The ambassador demanded justice. He called the human attack unprovoked aggression. He insisted that sanctions be placed on Earth and all its colonies. Other voices joined him. The wanted the human fleet commanders arrested. The crystalline hegemony suggested quarantining the entire Sol system. For hours, they argued and shouted and pointed fingers at the primitive savages who had dared to challenge civilized society. But not everyone agreed. The ambassador rose to speak. There were a peaceful species, traders and merchants who traveled the galaxy in their colorful ships. They had been bullied by the larger powers for centuries, forced to pay tribute and accept unfair deals. The ambassador was old and wise. She had watched the recording of the mockery. She had also watched the recording of the human rescue. "My friends," she said, her voice calm amid the chaos, "let us consider what actually happened. A civilian vessel was in distress. They called for help on the Universal Channel. And what did we do? We laughed at them. We told them to die in the darkness." The chamber grew quieter. "The humans did not ask for war," she continued. "They asked for their people back. When we refused, when we mocked their suffering, they came to save their own. Can any of us say we would not do the same?" The ambassador sputtered in outrage, but was not finished. "We call them death as an insult. We look down on them because their home planet is dangerous. But perhaps we should consider what that means. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. They survived predators and disasters and plagues, and through all of it, they learned one lesson that we seem to have forgotten. They learned that you do not abandon your own." She turned to face the full assembly. "I will not support sanctions against humanity. My people will seek better relations with Earth. And I suggest that the rest of you consider very carefully how you treat the death from now on." She sat down. The chamber erupted in arguments again, but something had shifted. They were not alone in their thinking. A species that had suffered under expansion for generations also spoke in support of humanity. They requested formal diplomatic meetings with Terran representatives. They wanted to learn from the species that had stood up to the bullies of the galaxy. A young species still finding their place among the stars sent a private message to Earth. They asked if humans might be willing to teach them. They wanted to know how to be strong without being cruel. They wanted to learn the lessons of the death world. One by one, the smaller species of the assembly began to see humanity differently, not as primitives to be mocked, but as potential allies, perhaps even friends. On Earth, the 7th Battle Group returned to a hero's welcome. Crowds gathered at the spaceports to cheer the returning ships. News feeds carried stories of the rescue around the world. Admiral Laura was offered medals and promotions, but she turned them down. "I did my duty," she told the press. "Any officer in the fleet would have done the same. Our people were in danger and we brought them home. That is not heroism. That is just what we do." She returned to her ship and her crew. She had no interest in fame or glory. She just wanted to make sure her people were ready for whatever came next. Captain Cole retired from cargo transport. The experience had changed him. He could no longer see himself hauling supplies across the stars as if nothing had happened. Instead, he accepted a position at the Terran Merchant Marine Academy, where he would train new captains on crisis management and survival. His first lecture was simple. He told the cadets about the nebula. He told them about the mockery and the fear and the long hours of waiting. And then he told them about the moment the fleet arrived. "Never give up," he said. "No matter how bad things get, never give up. Because out there somewhere someone is coming for you. Humanity does not abandon its own. Remember that, and you will never truly be alone." Amy published her recordings of the incident. They became required viewing at military academies across human space. Every cadet, every officer, every soldier saw what the aliens had said about them, and they saw how humanity responded. Shaw received a commendation for engineering excellence under impossible conditions. He continued working as a ship engineer, though he became something of a legend in the field. People said he could fix anything with nothing but willpower and spare parts. Doctor stayed in space. She transferred to a search and rescue vessel, where she spent the rest of her career saving lives on the edge of civilization. She never forgot the people she had treated on the Starboard Hope, and she made sure no one else had to face what they had faced. Gary Lane healed from his injuries and returned to work, but he was different now. He talked more. He connected with his. He understood that every human being was part of something larger, a community that stretched across the stars. The galaxy slowly adjusted to the new reality. Humanity was no longer a joke. The death had proven themselves in the most dramatic way possible. Species that had once looked down on humans now treated them with caution and sometimes even respect. But not everyone learned the lesson. Some aliens still mocked. Some still underestimated. Some still believed that creatures from a savage world could not truly stand among the civilized. Those who believed this were wrong, and eventually they would learn the truth the hard way. Because the message of the nebula was clear, written in the wreckage of alien ships and the saved lives of 37 human beings. Humanity had crawled out of a death world. They had survived everything their own planet threw at them, and they had emerged stronger for it. Their capacity for kindness was matched only by their capacity for war. They would share and trade and cooperate with anyone willing to treat them fairly, but they would never abandon their own. They would never let mockery and cruelty go unanswered. The stars belonged to everyone, including the death, and anyone who forgot that would be reminded. Admiral Laura stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute as it orbited Earth. She looked down at the blue and green world below, the planet that had made her species what it was. She thought about the 37 people they had saved. She thought about the lesson the galaxy had learned. It was a good day, she thought, but there would be more challenges ahead. There always were, and humanity would face them the way they had always faced everything. Together, unbroken, unyielding. That was the way of the death. That was the way of humanity. And the galaxy was beginning to understand.